In this tutorial, we're going to look at some powerful tools that enable us to edit clipart in Aspire. We're going to take 3 pieces of clipart that comes free with your software and show how easy it is to edit them and create a brand new model. To get started, we're going to set up a file that's approximately the size of our finished mantle that we want to make. So let's click on Create a New File, and we're going to make sure it's a single-sided job. We're going to change our width to be 48 inches. We're going to change our height to be 6 inches. And we have 1 inch thick material we're going to be using. We're going to be zeroing off our material surface. Our datum will be set to the center. And we're going to use a very high modeling resolution. It's important to use this because we are using 3D content. A Canadian maple will be our material, and then we're going to click OK. So there's several different ways to bring in 3D content into your project. And when you downloaded this tutorial and installed it, we gave you the 3 bits you're going to need, but these 3 bits also come free with your software. So I'll show you how to access the ones with the tutorials first, and then we'll show you how to access the ones that come free with your software. So on the modeling tab, if we click on import a component or 3D model, you can click that. And if you navigate to tutorials file, you'll see that you have the 3 pieces we need right here. This is the center part, so we're going to double click on it and bring it right into our job. Now, if we select the center handle of our flourish and we drag it down, it should snap to the middle of our job. And then we can just let go of that where it is. So it's perfectly centered in our job. We do want to make sure that we have turned on our geometry snapping and our smart snapping turned on for right now. Now the next piece that we're going to bring in, we are going to go ahead and use our free installed clipart that you got with your software. And that will end up in your clipart tab in your clipart. And it's been all sorted out in file folders for you here. So we're going to be looking for decorative. We're going to click that. And then we're going to scroll down through that. And we're going to be looking for a piece that looks just like this one right here. So we'll double click on that. And again, it's brought directly into our software. So we'll just go ahead and move that off to the side a bit. And then we need a third piece. And if we go down and we look for it, it's Flourish 7.5. So we'll just go down farther here until we get to, there we go, to the 7.5s. And it's this guy right here. We will drag him in and put him to the side like that, out of the way for us. Now, because we know the approximate height of our model or of our space that we're going to put our mantle in, we should be able to go ahead and use some numbers to scale up our components. Now, just to make things a little bit easier for us, we should go and rename these something, because we're going to use some copies of these and it might get a little bit confusing. So if we go to our modeling tab, we're going to go ahead and rename all of these different components. And to do that, you just need to select it, right click on it, and go down to rename. And we're going to call this one A. We're going to select the second one. We're going to right click on that and go down to rename. We're going to call it B. And then for our center one, we're going to right click on that and go down to rename. And we're simply going to call it center. And press enter to accept that. And that looks perfect. So let's just size these up to what they need to be. We have our center already selected. So if we go to our drawing tab and we choose set selected object size, we can click that and we can change the height to be 4.8. And you're going to want to make sure that you have your link XY clicked and the auto scale Z clicked as well, so everything gets sized up properly. We'll click apply. And we're going to leave this dialog open and we'll go and select the second one. And we'll just slide it out of the way a little bit. And we're going to change the height of it to be 3.8. And we're going to click apply. But again, we haven't unchecked the auto scale Z or the link XY, so everything should be fine. And that looks pretty good. Now, let's close this down because we're done with it. And let's go ahead and position these where they need to be. To do that, we're going to tile our views horizontally. So we have on the top is our 2D view and the bottom is our 3D view. And when we do a mantle like this, it's important that we get the flow right. You can put together a bunch of different components, but if they don't flow nicely, they won't look all that great. So to do that, we're going to take a look at our center, and you'll see that it kind of flows down like this. Now we could leave this flourish the way it is, but I'd like to flip it around and tuck this tail underneath. So with this selected, we can go ahead and press H on the keyboard and we'll flip it horizontal for me. That looks pretty good. Then we're just going to drag it over into place where I'd like it to be, which is somewhere around there. I can use my cursor keys to nudge it into place. I'm pretty happy with that right where it stands. And the last piece, same thing, we want to create that flow. So we have this nice flow going on here. That's pretty nice. So if we rotate this guy into place and move him down here. That's not quite right. So let's press V on the keyboard to flip it vertically. And then let's rotate it around. Now we're talking. It comes down and around and just perfect. So let's just tuck him in there. And again, I want this to flow to be right. Looks good. Looks good. That's nice. I think what I want to do is holding down my shift key, I can select both of those and using my cursor key to nudge it down one step. I like that better right there. So you get a nice flow going on, and that all looks perfect. Now we have to go in and fix some parts, especially where some of the components come together. The first thing we want to look at is how we have set up our component properties for merging. And right now it's not set right. Obviously these aren't being merged in right. These ones are, but this one isn't. If we take a look at our modeling tab under our component tree, we'll see that we have our A flourish is set to merge, our B flourish is set to add, and our center is set to add. These really all should be merged. So if we hold down our shift key and select all of the components, right click and choose combine mode and make sure that we choose merge for them all, and everything should be sorted out with this part right there for us. And that looks perfect. Now we do have this little problem right here where our end flourish merges in, but then there's this weird little loop at the end. I really don't want that loop there anymore, and there's a couple different ways we can get rid of that loop. One would be to draw a vector around it and actually delete what was inside of a closed vector, but I'd like to show you how to use the sculpting tools to do that. So if we go ahead and zoom into this area using our scroll wheel on our mouse, we can zoom in. If we hold down both of our left and right mouse buttons at the same time, we can slide our project to the right. And there it is. And we'll select the component we want to edit and then choose sculpting. Now, one of the neat features of the undo brush is that we can use it as an eraser. So while we're using the undo brush, if we hold down the shift key, it will actually erase part of a component. So let's choose that. Let's just hover over top of our component, and we're just sort of checking the brush size to make sure our brush size is the right size for what we need. And that's pretty good. We could make it a little bit bigger. I think that's probably okay. And if we hold down our shift key, and then click our left mouse button and drag around, you'll see that I can erase parts of that component. And I want to leave it so that some of it is actually overlapping into this flourish here. And I think that looks pretty good. So we can keep that. And as soon as we click OK, we're going to see the updated version in our 3D view. And that looks perfect. I really like that a lot. I really do like the way this all looks. So let's just zoom out of our 3D view so we can see the whole layout that we have, or the whole left side of our layout. We didn't really need to build the right side because we're actually just going to mirror whatever we come up with on the left-hand side over the center line to finish off our actual mantle. I really do like it, but I think we need to add something to the end here. And I think the piece I want to add to the end is right in there. So if we zoom in on our 3D view for a second, I think this piece right there will do the job for us. Now, one of the ways we can do that is we can actually crop this center component and only keep this piece of it. So if we maximize our 2D view, and we're going to go ahead and use our zoom box, and we're going to zoom into this area right there. That looks great. Now, to draw a vector around that, we need to make sure that we have really accurate tracing abilities. So if we go into our edit and go down to snap options, we want to make sure that our snapping radius is turned all the way down to small. Click OK. And we're also going to turn off our geometry snapping and our smart snapping. And we're going to drop in a vector. So we go to our drawing tab. We're going to create a polyline. And we're just going to drop in some nodes, some lines around the area that we want to keep. And when we get to the end, we can just press tab on our keyboard and that will finish that up. Close down that dialog, and we need to just make a few little changes. One is right here. We need to make sure that we don't keep this little tip here. So if we select that vector, we press N on our keyboard to go into node mode, we can just grab these two nodes and move them down so that that's fine. And we might make a little change right here to this node. We'll just grab it and just slide it up out of the way. That looks great. Let's zoom back out again so we can see that. Go back to our selection tool, go to our modeling tab, and we're going to use this tool right here called clear area of selected component outside of our selected vector. But to do that, when we do that, what's going to happen is it's going to remove all the extra component that isn't contained within inside that vector. And that's great and all, but we won't have the rest of it to use to finish, to put back in place again. So to be sure that we can do that, we're going to select it. If we go to our drawing tab, we can use our copy option. So it's going to copy that selected component to our computer's clipboard. And then we can proceed to select our vector, hold down our shift key, select that component, go back to our modeling tab, and go ahead and clear the selected component. Just before we do that, actually, we should probably tile our views again so we can see what's going to happen. Let's zoom out to see everything, and let's click that. And there you'll see that all we're left with is this little bit. So let's delete that vector. We don't need that anymore. Let's grab that piece, slide it over here. And then before we forget, we better paste that center back in place again. We can go back to our drawing tab and we can choose paste from our clipboard, or we can just go hold down our Control and V key on our keyboard and we'll paste it right back in place again. Now let's zoom in to the end of our layout using our scroll wheel, and then again holding down the left and mouse buttons and pulling to our right. And let's put this where it belongs. So let's select it. Let's manually rotate it. Slide it into place. And like we had mentioned before, we want to get the flow right. So we want it to come down and go up and then flow nicely around that. So let's just rotate that around. Tuck that in there. Rotate a bit more maybe. Then tuck it in. And I think that looks really good. At least the flow anyway. We still have this little piece right here that's peeking through the flourish on the end. So we need to fix that. And one of the techniques we can use to do that with is to use our sculpting tools again. So if we select both of those and we go to our modeling tab and choose to sculpt, then right away our software is going to say, you need to bake these two pieces together to make them one. And we want to do that. So we're going to click OK. And now those two parts have now become one. Let's choose our smoothing. Again, hover over top of our 3D model to check out the size of our sculpting brush. It's a little bit big, so let's just turn it down. And one of the techniques I use when I'm sculpting is if I want to remove this little lump, the first thing I want to do is I want to go choose lower only, so that when I smooth it, it's only going to lower material down. It's not going to raise up material. which makes it a bit easier, especially when you're new to sculpting. And once you get it to the point where you can't do anything more with it, then click it back to normal, and then you can just do a couple swipes and everything works out perfect and it looks really good. Let's click on keep and click OK and take a look at our full mantle so far, and everything looks pretty good. Now this is a great opportunity for us to have a look at any pieces of this that we think might be reusable. I really like the way that this is working together here at the end. When we look at it all around, it looks really nice. Well, it looks pretty good. I would like to make one little change, is that this end bit could be a little bit thicker, just to sort of match the weight of everything else. So if we look straight down on that again, let's select that end piece. We're going to bring up our floating properties dialog box, and we are going to use our tilt option here. So if we select tilt, we have the option of dropping in 2 anchor points. So we're going to angle this or tilt our component from here to there. And we're going to use some settings in degrees. So we're going to use, let's try 1 degree, press the space bar, and you'll see that's lifted up the end. And just looking at it, it looks like it's much better now. I really like that a lot. And it hasn't affected the way that the end of our flourish marries up with the start of this flourish. So that's great. So let's close that down. Let's just off-click everything and take a good look at that. That's great. Now I really think that this piece here I can reuse. And if you don't believe me, we can just turn off the center bit. And that looks really nice. So we're going to go ahead and select the B and hold down our control key and select center. Right click, and we're going to group those together. And what we've done is we've created a temporary group of those. They're not baked together. They can still be ungrouped to the 2 parts again, but what they'll be is they'll always move around together. I can export them as a 3D clip file, and they'll always be together as a group so that I can bring it back into another project down the way. So let's rename this. Right click on that, and we'll rename that to left flourish. That looks great. Right click on that. We're going to say export 3D clip, and we can put that right back into our tutorials folder, and we're just going to leave that named left flourish.3D clip, and we can save that for another job down the road. Let's turn back on our center again. It looks pretty good. Just do a little housekeeping. Let's just rename that to be just center. We'll get rid of that. Now if we select our left flourish, we can now go ahead and mirror that across our center. And to do that easily, we're just going to go ahead and select mirror selected components. We're going to make sure that we have flip about job center turned on. We want to make sure that we're creating a mirrored copy, and we're going to flip horizontal, and it should flip over to our right hand side. Close this down, and we're going to rename this component right flourish, and delete off this at the end. Press enter to accept. It's always good housekeeping to take your full 3D composite layout and create one solid component from it, and then export that out for later use if you'd like to. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our modeling tab, and we're going to create a brand new level. So we're going to right click on top of level number 1, and we're going to insert a new level. And then we're going to take, and on this level, we're going to create a component of what we see in our 3D view, and that's called our composite layout. And we can do that by clicking Create Component from Visible Model. So if I click that, you'll see we have a new component made, and that's called our composite relief. So if I turn off level 1 now, you'll see that this is what we have. And the great thing about this now is that I can size this up as one big thing. And I know that I could probably fill out my mantle a little bit more. So if we go and press T on the keyboard with this selected, then we'll end up bringing up our set size. And we're going to change that to be 5.5, our height. And again, link X and Y and our auto scaler turned on. And we can click apply, and now it'll be sized up, and that's perfect. Now we can just go ahead and right click on that and export that out as our finished component. And we're going to call this Mantel Flourish. And that's great. Click save. Now that we've taken the time to save out the 3D clip of the left-hand side of our layout and then also the full composite layout, you can easily access those and use them in your other projects. If you click on your clipart tab and go to your local files and navigate to your Mantel assembly tutorial, you'll see that they're right here in your files. And this is perfect because now the next time you need to go and create a brand new Flourish mantle, or if you need to create another one for another customer or for another, maybe a headboard for a bed or the top of a bureau, then you can go ahead and use these components to make a matching part. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful. Now I want you to take a few seconds and dig into your clipart and see what you can take out and edit and make your own.